to record to this computer. All right. And here we go. All right. So I have about 11 questions. And let's start with the first one. And it is, how, if at all, has the pandemic affected your work? Or your ability to work, or your work as a whole? Any way you want to address that?
It actually hasn't changed much. You know, I mean, the way I worked before the pandemic is I rent a studio here in Providence, separate from where I live, and I go there to do that activity. It's a solo activity. You know, usually I'm there by myself unless my wife is in there working. And you know, with the pandemic and isolating, it's just not that much different from my daily practice when I'm making work.
Mm-hmm. So it hasn't like psychologically impacted or distracted you, or you're able to just keep at it?
I think, sure, it's distracted me. I mean, who's not distracted with what's going on out there? But like I'm working on paintings that, well, let's see. I maybe started one after, you know, mid-March, after the pandemic hit. Otherwise, I was working on them already, and it's kind of like, rather than feel the need to switch gears and do something either in response or relation to the pandemic, I don't do that kind of work anyway. I mean, it's all, so not much has changed. I mean, other than the codes of the building, having to wear a mask, you know, in the hallway, and
so you think that, here, let me ask you a question that you can't know the answer to, but I'm just thinking about, you know, because I've talked with other people, and it really ranges, like their response to that question, not just the faculty at MCC. You know, people are in different places with it. So do you think that your paintings would look the same as they would have if you had not had, if the pandemic wasn't going on and you were just continuing your practice as you do?
Well, that's a tough one, because
Hard to know.
Well, it's hard to know. Yeah.
I mean, it sort of brings up the question of what's embedded in the work.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
You know,
It's
it
all
definitely
embedded in the work.
it affects your state of mind.
Choices.
You know, in the spring, I had more time in the studio too, because, you know, we were all isolating and I was teaching online. I can do that, you know, anytime. So I
shortens the commute, right?
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
And yeah, and minus the commute. So I had more time, but also, like you said, it's hard to tell how it would show up in the work, if it showed up in the work. I don't know if I'd be able to tell at this point, maybe a few years down the road.
Yeah. Okay. So do you have certain requirements for making your work, like physical requirements in terms of space? Do you need to be in a certain state of mind to do your work? Are there parameters, like to get in there and get it done? What do you need?
It's great if I am in the right state of mind. But if I'm not in the right state of mind, I always think about it like, you know, I'm not going to sit around and wait to be in the right state of mind. I mean, who knows when that's going to be?
Exactly. For the
And
golden light to shine
I want
on
to take
you
advantage of the time in the studio, and I tell myself to push through it if, you know, if you like, get in the right state of mind. If you're not in the right state of mind, right?
Yep.
Yeah, who was it? I think Chuck Close said, you know, waiting for inspiration is for amateurs. It's like, maybe that's not exactly what he said, but yeah, I try to push through whether I'm in the mood or not. And then I've had mixed results, maybe.
Yeah.
You know, you go when it's a little rough and you're not focused the right way, and you're trying to force it. Mm-hmm. And then at the end of the day, you realize you kind of wasted a day or even did work you're going to have to undo and redo.
But I
Um,
still think that doing that work leads you to a place that you wouldn't have gotten to if you hadn't done the work. You know what I mean? Like
too. And I've
get,
also had it the other way. Where
you're breaking up just a little bit. There you are. You're back.
you are too. In back?
Yeah,
It
you're
says my
back.
connection is unstable, but I've got internet.
Okay,
Um,
we're here.
yeah. But I've had the opposite happen too, where I go in not exactly maybe in the right mindset, but by the end of the day, it's like couldn't have asked for anything better. It's just like it's almost magic. Stuff's falling into place, and you're just like, wow, this is great. So
Yes.
I've had it go
Yeah.
both ways, actually.
Yeah. It's
Mhm.
like I tell students, you must have students who say, I just don't know what to make. I don't know what to do. I'm having a hard time. I'm bored. I can't motivate. I can't. And my answer is always the same. It's do the work, whatever.
Yeah,
Even if the work sucks, sort of do the work.
right. There was another artist that it was from a documentary, and I remember him saying, a lot of art making is ditch digging. You
Yeah.
know,
Boring,
and I
monotonous.
completely understand. I totally understand what he meant by that. It's so true. It's
Yeah.
just doing the work.
Yeah. And sometimes the work is like art making is really stupid. Like it's really stupid. Like, okay, I am going to spend 40 hours on this little area of this sculpture. You know, I'm
Yeah,
just gonna for 40 or 100 or how many. I mean, that's sort of stupid
yeah,
work, but
absolutely. I have a friend who has a very practical job, and he's a good friend. So we have long conversations, not just about um, I mean, art, but life in general. And he's not an artist. Although whatever he does do, he tries to have an artistic, sort of side to it. But he's very curious about what I do because it just seems like, how am I able to do that? And at this, where his life is so, I get dominated by 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, and doing something that I guess is can be labeled as practical. Whereas I'm in the studio doing things that
nobody's
that
telling you what to do.
nobody's telling me what to do, and maybe there's a very, very, very limited audience for what it is that I'm doing.
I don't think so, but yeah,
Yeah.
the freedom to do the work is such a gift, I think.
I mean, one of the things I've tried to explain to him is, because he is curious about what I do, is imagine if you're given the space and resources and time to um, play and do what you want. It's not exactly true because it's hard work and it's not play, but there's that component to it. A lot of
It,
times I think about like just how crazy it is, the thing that I'm doing and devoting all this time in the studio. I mean, one of the images I sent you is a painting that's like I'm 2 years in on it.
yeah.
2 years. I'm 2 years in. It's not consecutive every day 2 years,. But it's 2 years.
Is it this one?
Yeah,
Yeah. Wow.
yeah.
Yeah. I
And
don't think the last time I saw it, there was the bathroom, the toilet. That's blowing my mind.
yeah. I don't remember showing you a previous version of it, but
I think you did, but
maybe I did.
it wasn't all this. It's so very much like I'm in the space.
I mean, that's what I want it to be.
Yeah, very much. That's crazoid. We'll come back to that. We'll come
Okay.
back to that. But yeah, I just wanted to say that you said play, like, what if you had this space and you could go in and do whatever you want and play all day? And that sounds like art making is like this light, just whatever you want in the space. And yet,
Yeah.
Peter Waite, do you know him? He's a Connecticut painter.
It
He won.
sounds familiar, but I don't like. Maybe I've heard the name
You
before,
probably,
but
I think you would like his work. But anyway, he gave a gallery talk and he said art making is like play. And when he said that, I thought, you're a super serious artist. This is, but when I thought about it, like if you think back to being a kid and
Mhm.
playing, like whatever it was you were playing, it meant everything, right? Like you were
Right.
totally invested in that marble game or dressing that Barbie or whatever it is that you're playing. I think it's the same. I think play is a good analogy, actually. I think you're frozen again, Brett. There you are.
Yeah, it isn't. It isn't.
You're back.
Am I back?
You're back.
I don't know. Usually we have a good internet here. I'm at home, so I don't know what
Could be
the
from my
problem
end.
is.
I don't know. I'm on a laptop sometimes.
But you know, another thing that's about play is that that's similar to art making is it is kind of I think just there's an absurdity sometimes when I'm in the studio and I become fully aware of what it actually is that I'm doing. You know, we've already touched on it, like devoting all this time and for me, specifically for me, into a surface, like just constantly reworking a
2
surface
years is a long time.
for years. Yeah.
It's wonderful, the commitment. That's really wonderful. And
I'm glad to hear you say that. Sometimes I wonder about my own like sanity. This same friend that I told you about, I talked to him the other day about this very painting, and he asked me, "Do you think you could have built a small house within that time?" And yes, I
sure.
most definitely could.
Sure.
And it kind of put it in perspective for me.
But look at the painting.
Yeah, no, it's true. And yeah,
Yeah.
it is. But at the same time, I think like I'm always wondering about, am I doing the most with my time? Am I making the most use of my time? Am I getting, results that sort of uh, make me feel better about my decisions,
Do you think that it's dangerous to think about time in relation to your work because it's so relative? I mean, in terms of some artists, it could take, 5 minutes to
Yeah,
make.
I know. I think about that a lot because I've had to come to terms with it because it's constant. It's on my it's on my mind because the more the lot the more I do this, the more I realize that the paintings are going to take longer to get the type of painting I want, to get the surface that I want, to have the painting's surface itself be a rich history.
Yeah.
Like it's gonna take time. So I've had to tell myself it's gonna take as long as it's going to take, and I have to be okay with that, even though I have a gallery and they want paintings from me, and they've been real patient with me spending a lot of times on the big paintings, even though it's not necessarily something that they'll be able to sell, or maybe even would have an interest in selling. But they do really, really want some, more moderate sized paintings from me, and would, like to have of course, a show. And it's really more and more increasingly so. It's harder and harder to have that kind of body of work to show because each of the paintings is taking longer to make.
Yeah. And to make paintings to sell is different than making paintings that you need to make, I think.
Yeah.
Sometimes, not all the time, not for everyone, but very often.
Yeah, and so I don't compromise in that way, and it'll result in whatever it results in. Luckily, the gallery is really supportive.
That's
And
wonderful. Respectful of your process.
yes, and they'll give me the time. At least they have so far.
I also, as you're saying that, I'm thinking, sometimes these things like flip on a dime. Like a year from now, you may be moving into a different body of work that requires different things from you. Sometimes it's hard to know what you're going to do 5 years from now or 10 years from now.
Right. And we're still in that first question, right? I think, but
No, we're moving a little bit.
we are, because I forgot to mention that, like, where I am, the space, which is part of that first question, is incredibly important. I mean, my subjects, the things I make painting of, paintings of, or they're in my immediate surrounding. I mean, it's rare that I like go outside of it to search for something.
Yeah, let's let's
Um,
let's mention that for people who aren't familiar with your work or how you go about it, that this is a painting of your studio space, correct?
yes.
Yeah, so no still life, no human beings sitting posing. It's looking at an area of your actual studio and representing it in paint.
Yes, mostly it's the floor, but the wall and the bathroom, they're like the east side of the studio. Um,
Why do you
and
do that?
well, when I uh, initially rented this studio space, I chose it because I was interested in making larger paintings of an interior space. So I kind of, you know, auditioned a number of spaces
I see.
that were potential like possibilities to rent, and this one um, stuck in my brain, you know. The reason why is because, you know, it's like a lot of artist studios. There's all sorts of residue from previous people that had been in there, and this one had sign painters in um, before me, and so they had, you know, tested things on the walls, and the floors were, you know, covered. You can kind of like trace their activity on both the walls and the floor, and I just, you know, um,
Yeah, I said human beings weren't part of your work, and yet they are.
yeah, they are
Oh,
very much.
totally a part of
Yeah,
your.
very much so. And so um, I rented this space specifically to do a series of large interior paintings. And initially, it wasn't my studio even. I moved in with just one big painting, one big canvas. And, you know, it's kind of like, it's kind of, I think of it as like I felt like I was going to church or something, because the whole thing was empty, and except for the space itself and the floors and the walls and
Mm.
two tables that had been left in there. And I felt like I was going in to, you know, learn from the subject slowly as I built this painting. This one that we're looking at is the second one of the large paintings. I think I'm thinking three total, and I haven't started the third one yet. But um, and specifically, like when I looked at this, is this painting in the middle? There's this like sort of there's a shape right in the middle on the floor. It's kind of a diamond shape that is had some. They had set something down, and the paint had kind of oozed out and left this like milky residue on the floor. And I just it's like I gotta paint that. I've got to paint that, you know. And then the rest, you know, when I see something like that that has these opportunities in paint that I want to go after and has a certain um,
So when you saw that place where someone they had put something down and it had oozed out, you know, and kind of uncontrolled event took place, a little bit messy, and was it the human component of that event that drew you, or?
it's both the human component, like imagining this happening, and there's like a familiarity with it too, because I've just been in had a lot of odd jobs, and I just know what takes place when you're kind of in a rush and you're working with materials.
But is
And
it metaphoric?
um mm, is it metaphoric? I'm not exactly sure. I mean, I'm thinking more of a specific metaphor, but it is like um I love looking at things like that, you know, it's not the intended outcome.
Uh,
Somebody was doing something with purpose and with, you know, a specific thing in mind, and this is like the leftover of that activity that was never meant to be elevated or seen or paid attention to. And
And yet it's so
quite
expressive
often those
activity.
remnants, those what's that? It broke up there a little bit.
I said, and yet it's so expressive of the activity, even though it wasn't intended, intended to be part of the finished.
Yeah, I mean, I think about that floor is just like, pockets of it, areas of it have specific um, marks and a specific look. I mean, I've been looking at it for so long. It's like, how did that happen? How did that end up there? And over here, this is here.
It was really lovely the way when you were talking about entering this space, and how you said it was sort of like going to church, or there was something, I don't know, sacred is a big word, but there was something larger than you in the space, and the
Mhm.
kind of the way you um, put your subject above you, or a little bit maybe beyond you, rather than the work being about you. It was about,
Yeah,
or it's about a discovery of something that you don't know.
yeah. I mean, I wasn't sure what to expect. I'd never worked in that scale before, and I was so excited to do it. Um, even something like just building the stretcher, and when I first started going to the space to make the painting, it was a spiritual kind of thing. Um, Part of it's because the whole space was empty and it was just me and my painting and the rest of the space. But um, at the time, I wasn't. I was on sabbatical, so I all I was doing every day was painting for at least 8 hours, and I hadn't really had the opportunity to experience that kind of intensity before.
It was
And
wonderful, huh?
it was like, and I remember, I remember the difficulty of doing what I wanted to do, like having it work the way I wanted it to work, observing it close enough and getting it right, and redoing it, and we're, you know,
So that brings me to a question, one of these questions, because you're talking about it now. So let me ask it specifically. When you're creating your work, is there a certain criteria that you use to assess it in process? Like, how do you judge what you will accept and won't accept?
well, I'm really concerned about how the image is constructed with this medium, with oil paint, and I won't stop until I think not only have I captured the likeness of the subject of the thing that I'm painting, but that the way it's constructed, um, that I'm satisfied with that. I'm satisfied with the application of the paint, um, and more so, I become a bigger and bigger critic of myself and how it's constructed. There needs to be some surprise there. There needs to be. It can't just be going. These are the things I tell myself: is it can't be going straight forward for um, just after the likeness. I'm trying to build a history there that's as compelling as the history that caught my attention in the first place of the subject.
So it may look different than it actually does standing in the space, the painting.
Um, I mean, I go after the smallest things, Susan. Like I go after dots. I mean, you know, and
But
I
it's
don't,
still, but
I
it's a
don't.
painting. It's not a place, so it's a different experience for the viewer.
No, that's true. But I am like one thing I would say about the practice of me painting is like it's empirical. Like I keep after the shapes until they all fit together, like I'm observing. And until that happens, I keep going, I keep measuring, and I keep comparing things to each other and looking at one thing next to another and changing. And I just am so persistent until it all fits together. I
So
can
it's as
double
much
check,
about
recheck.
it's as much about seeing what's wrong as it is seeing what's right as you move along.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um,
It's, that's the thing is I mean, when you talk about what can I live with, I I can't live with, what I tell my students a lot is like, um, this is painting one specific, right? They're learning how to see, and they're having to work from direct observation. We start off with a two-dimensional thing and then work our way into 3D. And what I tell them is, if you're working on a painting and you can see that um, the bottle or whatever it is that they're painting, that its proportions are wrong, that's you getting sharper, and you should be proactive, and you should make the change, even though that change may create other issues in the paintings where you have to tackle multiple things again.
mhm.
You should fix it, because that's you getting stronger, your vision's getting more accurate, and you're learning to see better
That's
in
great.
terms of relationships,
Right.
like
That's great
relationships.
advice.
And again, it's a specific type of painting, like from observation, which of course I'm really steeped in. um, and so if I can see something's wrong in my painting, right, I cannot let it be. I cannot let it go. I have to fix it, even if it means an avalanche of a mess that I've got to figure out, because I like seeing my paintings when they are done and feeling a sense of accomplishment, not
Yeah.
not looking at the painting and thinking, oh, there it is, like haunting me. It's haunting me. It's coming, it's like, oh, maybe nobody else sees it, but I know it's there. And it's like a terrible, terrible feeling. I hate when that happens.
Worse than having to redo something, or you call it an
Exactly.
avalanche of things. It sounds like, I mean, I think I've been there in my own practice from time to time, and it can be like exhausting and sort of just, it can crush you for just a little while, but as you say, not as much as accepting it.
Yeah, it does. And sometimes it's so overwhelming that you have to walk away,
Yeah.
for a while. And
Shut
then,
the door.
yes, but like a week later, 2 weeks later, I'm back at it. And like you said, even like the failures all add up in the end.
Failures are wonderful. They're doorways. I mean,
Yeah.
they're brutal, of course, but they're also doorways to other
Yeah.
places. So are there things that you do outside of your art making practice that support your work?
I try to read as much as I can.
What
Um,
kind of reading?
I read art. I mean, some art criticism,
Oh,
but only the accessible kind. Not the cryptic circular stuff, like critical theory or anything like that. I like to hear um, specific, writers, and I try to expand that as much as I can. But and how I like to hear them talk about art, and like to hear other people talk about art that I'm familiar with, but maybe articulate in a way that maybe I've sensed or felt from looking at a piece that maybe I never articulated, but have this feeling about, and then
yeah.
couldn't get to the bottom of it. And then they help me, if it's not a specific piece, just in general. Like, it's great to read somebody else's thoughts about work.
Mhm. Okay. What are the greatest challenges you face as an artist?
Man, there's so many. I mean, uh, I would say doubt, but we all struggle with
No,
doubt, right?
that's a good thing to mention. Doubt. What do you
Yeah.
mean? What kind of doubt? Doubt about what?
Doubt about, whether, boy, I've had some pretty, like, over the years, um, I wouldn't say moments where I've just, like, kind of stopped and, like, things we've already touched on, that this is like sort of a ridiculous activity for a grown man, like doubt like that, it just seems like all this resources, all of this precious time, we only have so much time, and here I am toiling away on this big ambitious painting that, um, you know, I a lot of times I've had questions whether I have it in me to finish it, and that's just not an equation of time. That's in consideration of finishing it the way I want it to be finished, the way I want, and the way I think it should be visually, and what I'm after visually. It can be, like, crippling, and yet I'm pretty persistent. I can work through it. And just like there's constant reevaluations of things, like, um, should I be, I don't, I'm sometimes I think I'm not trying enough or hard enough, in terms of methodologies, or experimenting, or just constantly messing with this material, um, and getting to a place that helps the work evolve.
If you had to break down percentage wise, the like the when you're making work, what percentage of the experience or the time is you're in a place of uncertainty, and what is the percentage where you just know just what you're doing and you got it?
Hmm. Maybe the uncertainty is like 30%, because when I'm actually painting, it's I'm pretty focused. I can look up an hour, 3 hours later, 4 hours later, and just can't believe it's 4 hours have gone by. You get sucked into this whole.
And when you come up like that, and okay, it's 4 hours later, and you've sort of backed off a little from the work, is
Mhm.
it always like, oh, that looks good? Or is it, oh my God, there's 4 hours and this is not
Well,
correct?
there's both, but boy, is it great when it looks good,
Yeah.
and then, like you said, even when it's not good, it's gonna help the surface and the build up, and when you finally arrive, it's under there, part of it, and a lot of times it's better for it, for those missteps earlier.
That's
It's
interesting. That's cool.
yeah, you can't plan that kind of stuff.
It's like you're almost do it, like your process is almost doing what the painting is showing.
Yes, and I think about that, and it's always, like, made me feel pretty solid about the subject,
Yeah. Yeah, that's
because,
wild.
yeah,
That's wild.
there's that link, like, I'm building a surface, with paint, and the history of building that surface is very similar to the very thing that I'm painting.
That's pretty wild. That's
Yeah.
pretty wild. So those are some of the challenges. I mean, I know they're like exhibiting, and there's eating and shelter, and all those things. But
I would say, another challenge is, I mean, it's not really a challenge, because I really don't think about this that much, but, I rent a studio, and that's a monthly, um, commitment. I mean, it's not nothing, and it's I wouldn't say it's expensive, but it's a chunk of money every month, and, you know, um, you kind of, I mean, I don't think about it much, because there really isn't another option. I need the space.
yeah,
That's what I tell myself. I need the space, and, I'm a
absolutely.
painter, and that's it.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. But okay, so how about rewards?
rewards of being an artist or rewards from the work?
Um, are those two different?
Not really. They're very much together. I guess the work. Right?
You're frozen a little bit. Oh, there you are. You're back.
Oh, can you hear me now?
I can.
I said you can't be an artist without the work. I
Yeah.
guess you could pose as an artist, right?
Wear a
Um,
beret.
yes. I would say there's like the rewards of it. It's really hard to put into a sentence or two. I mean,
Sure.
it's a lifestyle. And that lifestyle is incredibly rich. It's rich in so many ways, and I mean, I do a pretty great thing, not just making these paintings, in my mind. I think it's a great thing. It's a privileged thing to do, right? That you have to work very hard in order to be able to, I don't know, be granted permission to do it. Of course, you could make work whether or not you have permission or not. But what I mean is that, I'm a professor, so I teach painting. I teach the thing that I'm preoccupied with, and that is, become this huge, huge part of my life that I've invested a lot into. And I get to teach that and share that with, students. And it's because, painting is the reason that I've had not all of the experiences I've had, but the ones that have meant the most come from pursuing painting. There's the education itself, undergrad, graduate school, all the people that you meet there, the teachers and your peers, other students, the relationships you take from those specific situations. And then going out in the world, the same kind of thing. You go to openings and shows, networking, and it's all centered around this deciding to do this activity. Decided your decision to pursue this leads to all these doors and all these relationships, and in some ways ends up deciding where you're going to live. I mean, that's such a huge, huge thing. So in a way, I owe everything to this practice. um, the lifestyle that I live is like, I don't think I would trade it for anything. It's worth so much more than money. you know, it's, uh, I get to teach the thing that I'm passionate about, and I have a studio. I mean, sometimes I walk in the studio and I can't believe I have this as a place for me to do this. It just seems like I remember those younger days where it all seems so impossible, or that, you just don't have the resources. And so you get by with however you can get by. I mean, whatever you've got, a bedroom or whatever it is, you're painting in the living room. Um, so it's a pretty rewarding thing to be involved in, no matter how much doubt there is, that's caught up into it, or, what kind of, um, questions that come about. It's like a very special thing to be a part of.
Let's look at this painting. Can you see it? Did
Yeah.
I do that right? There we
Yeah.
are.
It's
So
called
what?
patched.
What?
Patched.
Patch.
Yeah.
So this is a cupboard. This is a cupboard. Where is this cupboard from?
No, it's not a cupboard actually. It is this, like, the top part there is a molding that is going around the outside of the bathroom in the studio.
Oh, so it's in the wall?
It's like, the bathroom that they built, they built it out in order to have a bathroom in the room. So it's like this little, you know, um, closet that comes out into the room rather than being in the wall.
Mm.
And this molding goes around the top of it. It doesn't go all the way up to the ceiling either. So this molding goes around the top of it. And it's actually this particular spot is in one of the larger paintings too, which I kind of, you know, I like that quite a bit because, you know, this is the detail of that specific area.
You know, I just made this link that
But
probably
basically,
you're frozen. Maybe doesn't mean anything. Can you hear me,
am I
Brad?
back? Yeah,
Yeah.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
So in your big painting, you have this, you know, you can sort of see into the bathroom. There's
Yeah.
a space that is somewhat revealed to us, but also a little secret.
Uh-huh.
And here we have these drawers, which, or, you know, like they're also secret. Like we don't see what's in there. Just
Well,
like,
there's in here on this small painting, this patched painting,
yeah,
it basically is like, think about a crown molding.
yeah.
Like, it's basically like it's not crown molding, but it plays a similar role. So it's this like wood molding that goes around the top. And in this particular point is somebody cut out kind of roughly this square section up towards the top. And then they patched it.
All right, you're talking about this one.
Yeah, this one.
Okay, not this one. Is there a green? What are you seeing on your screen?
I'm still seeing patched.
Oh, oh, okay, let me go back because I was seeing the green cupboard.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
No, that's okay. But let's look at this. All right, so yes, now it makes sense what you were saying.
So
And
they'd cut this out and maybe had like a 2x2 in there
mhm,
or something like that. For
mhm.
what reason, I don't know. And then they took it out and they patched it. Um,
But it looks like an abstract painting
it
too.
does, yeah.
All right, but I want to share this one. This is the one I was saying, like the bathroom I can't see all the way into in your
Uh-huh.
new big painting. These are drawers I can't see in there. So there are things in your work that remain unrevealed, I think.
Hmm.
And sort of it's true that we see like the product of people's activities, but we don't see the people. So
Right.
there's things that are very
Yeah, I mean, you're
present.
making. I always knew that the people were present. That record is there, symbolically, right? It's like
Sure. Yes.
this is all from other people,
Yeah.
um, either dealing with materials or spaces. That's the thing that I get sucked into and drawn into. And I've asked myself a lot about why that is, and I think I and it's very specific things. Again, it's like, you know, rules about making work. It always seems for me. Um, I'm not looking for pretty things to paint. I'm looking for things that actually are discards. They're completely imperfect. They're not things that people necessarily um, look at to get that reward of something pretty. You know, it has to be something that's doesn't get any kind of that kind of attention.
Not something to cherish in the traditional
Exactly. It's
cherishing.
like the more
Battered around it is, the more you like it.
yeah, the more, and also not just like a roughed up thing, but the more unremarkable it is, the better. You know, the more banal it is, the better. Um,
Well, your paintings show the rich quality of those objects, how they embody all the interactions that have taken place with them. Brett, what do you have any advice? I'm going to stop sharing here. Do you have any advice you want to give young artists, students?
Hmm. I mean, I'm always thinking about, in teaching my class
You
to
froze
sort
there.
of uh, light a fire. Oh, am I back?
Now you're back.
Can you hear me now?
I can.
So, in teaching my classes, I'm always thinking about what I can do to kind of light a fire in the students. Like, what could I say or do to help them? And I also try to put myself back at that, age of, let's say, like somebody coming in straight out of high school and trying to remember what I was like in my headspace at that time when I was that age, and what would have made a difference to me if somebody had, you know, given me some like great words of wisdom. And I think it's hard to pinpoint it, even though after all these years, I keep thinking, what can I tell them? And I mean, of course, it's like, um, the first thing is just get started, just get in there, um, and then the second part would be that you have to care about it. If you're not, if you don't care about it, it's so visible. It's like you don't care about it, and then why are we supposed to care about it? It's like you have to and I think this, like when you're making work, it really is a lot of it is like being interested in yourself, in how you think about things, how you make things, what you think about when you're making things. And sometimes I think that's not happening, and I need to like implant it in them that the rewards are so rich if you just like you get in the trenches and start to get analytical about what it is you're doing, why you're doing it, and thinking about materials and thinking about visuals and thinking, and bringing that whole package together in a very, very attentive way. Um, and if you do it, the rewards. I mean, you reap the rewards from that.
Agreed.
When you send great work out into the world, people notice, and you get all sorts of not just recognition, but doors open, opportunities get presented. And one of the things I felt that makes me feel really good is that I've had certain doors open, and it's been because of the work. I didn't know anybody.
Mm-hmm.
I sent it out in the world, and then this thing happened, this great thing happened, so
Yeah, that's the best.
yeah. But in order for that great thing to happen, you have to be committed, and it isn't just a time commitment. It's more of an awareness commitment, like thinking about just becoming sharper, and really, really caring about your work and what's happening with it and what you're learning from it, and how maybe that's the end of it. Yeah.
That's great advice. Great advice. Your students are lucky to have you. And thank
Oh,
you.
thanks. I appreciate that. Thank you.
And thanks for your time. We're going to put this live, everyone, with the faculty show, and you'll be able to see more of Brett's work. It'll be right with your images online. So,
Great.
Brett,
So this whole talk we just had will be there?
yeah,
Really?
yeah,
All right.
yeah. All right. Stay safe, Brett, and thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll see you
Thank
soon.
you. All right. Yes, we will. All right. Bye.
Bye.